When it comes to optimal chilling, it's typically occurring between December and January. Throughout the entire state of Nevada, this is generally our coolest time of year. Now, this map, you can see we're kind of giving a little bit of a range. Southern Nevada is looking at about a 100 to maybe 300-degree chill hours, where parts of northern Nevada, you are looking at anywhere from 700 up to even 900 hours. The Elko region, you would be looking at higher, Ely, higher. These keep the trees from starting to flower in what's called that false spring. This is also why you'll find it challenging for certain varieties to grow in your area. While northern Nevada really doesn't do well with trying to grow pomegranates, we can grow the trees, but we'll never see the fruit. Southern Nevada will have the challenge of not doing well with many of the apples and the pears. There's a limited variety that has a low chill. So what happens when you don't have the right accumulation of chill hours? You're going to see that your flower buds fail to develop. So you'll see the buds start to plump, but they don't pop until very late, which means you miss your pollination period if you need cross-pollination. Your leaves may appear later. Fruit set and the quality may be very poor, or you just don't see it. This is where if you buy a high chill tree in an area where you require a low chill. In cold areas, we have warm periods. This is what I referred to as your false spring. This can interfere with our chilling requirements. And this is where I mentioned earlier on that sometimes you want to really know your environment around your home. If you're just doing a few fruit trees, or if you're doing your garden, or if you're doing a full orchard, manipulating the location of certain trees behind protection or where they're shaded for longer can actually help you avoid trees blooming too early when we get these warm periods. So in northern Nevada, you would be looking at this warm period in about late January to sometimes early February, when there are still not just hard freezes coming, but long periods of winter still occurring. In southern Nevada, this would be if you start seeing something in December where you just don't have very much of a winter and it warms up, and you still have the high potential for not just a light frost, but heavy frosts later on. What you want to do is make sure you're choosing the appropriate variety. Here in this photo, you can see that we've got frost damage to an apricot. And you can see the flowers that are more of the tan color, they got hit by the frost, but not all the flower buds had opened. So you can see here's a perfect flower showing no tinging, no damage, and it's ready for the pollinators to come through. So when it comes to the cold hardiness and chilling requirements, I've given you a little bit of a cheat sheet here just to give you an idea. There are a lot more fruit trees, but these are the most common that people are desiring. So we've gone through it. Apples are anywhere from 500 to 1,000. Apricots, you can get them from 300 to 800. Figs, 100 hours. So in many cases, a fig may be perfectly appropriate for southern Nevada, but the truth of the matter is when it comes to northern Nevada, that's an indoor tree or a greenhouse tree. Peaches are another one where you're going to have to look at where you position it. If you really want to grow a peach, but you're in an area that generally doesn't see 500 hours of chill, you're going to want to try this on the north side of a building, and to keep it as cool as possible. It can still get the sunlight later on in the summer, but it's going to stay cooler when you're warming up more on the south and the west side. Now, look at the difference there between your chilling hours and your USDA hardiness zones. You can see many of these plants can be grown in any parts of Nevada, but the chilling hours may not match. So a persimmon is a 5 to 11, but it only requires 100 to 200 hours of chill. That's because it needs more heat units and a longer period of time for the fruit to develop. And that's why, in most cases, you won't see persimmons throughout the majority of Nevada, but you will see them in the southern region. Heat units and the ripening period is defined mostly by lack of frosts occurring. This is the period that the plant needs to take the nutrients that are stored, create food with its leaves, and put those nutrients into the fruit. Every fruit has a different period of ripening. Some may be less than 60 days, while others need over 120 days. It will differ by each variety and species that you're looking at. This is a rather old freeze free period map. I wouldn't suggest relying on these too much. It's better to understand your area and to get to know what your climate is around your home. But these maps are available. It just varies on how they're being updated. And as we know, things are changing every year. Nevada goes through droughts frequently, but our times for when our freezes are starting, when our winters start, and when we can start planting, they manipulate back and forth. This is an investment when you're doing fruit trees. Generally, whenever you plant a tree, you're not going to be seeing fruit for at least 2 to 3 years. So you want to make good decisions because this is not something like a small berry that will produce in that same season. All right. There is a difference between pollinization and fertilization. So please make sure that you understand this because just because your plant gets pollinated, it does not mean that the true complete fertilization process occurs. And sometimes people will see that their trees are covered with bees, but then their fruit fails to develop and there wasn't a freeze, there wasn't high winds. Sometimes this is just how the function goes in the flower, and this is nature. While honeybees are wonderful and we have them throughout our area and they bring them in, we have many native pollinators that are actually better at pollinating our plants. So it's very important to have a diverse plant life around your area to encourage multiple different pollinators, things that bloom early, things that bloom in the mid-season, so that you have a good variety coming to your fruit trees at the time that they flower. For ripening and pollination requirements, here's another table for you to just kind of take a look at. It gives you the days to maturity as far as the fruit goes. It also tells you if there is cross pollination required or if they are semi self pollinating or self pollinating. Now, if you're wondering what that means when we say semi self pollinating, so what that means is that they are capable of self pollinating, so cross pollinating within the one tree, but studies have found that the trees do much better when there are other varieties of the same species within an area where beneficial insects and pollinators help cross. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. Um, Many of your apricots are self-fruiting, but it's good to have another apricot in the area. This is one where you really want to pay attention because there's a lot of variety out there so that they are creating apricots that are hardier for northern areas that have later blooming rootstocks and cause them to have higher chill requirements. The other thing that you wanna look at is if you're doing something indoors, we're not gonna really go into this too much as far as if you're growing in a hoop house or greenhouse, but if you're doing a self-pollinating, you're gonna wanna have some type of wind still in that facility. If you're in homes, and you're doing citrus, you're going to need some air movement. In most cases, that will be fine with just your air conditioning or in some cases, even your heating units during the bloom time. But the majority of your plants are going to clearly indicate if they do require cross pollination, the cross pollinators that are appropriate. So you need to make sure you have room for not just one tree, but two. Or if you know a neighbor in the area is going to have fruit trees also, then sometimes it's good to have discussions there if you don't have enough room for yourself to have multiple fruit trees.